I do want to thank everybody for coming in. This is part of our sustainability series, and we've coined this particular COMMB Talks, what the DEI is going on. So it's a subject that is incredibly important. It's incredibly popular as a topic. And we really wanted to break this down with some expert panels who are actually doing something about the subject. So very active in this space, working in the advertising community for many years. We'll introduce the expert panelists in a moment. But first and foremost, I am so thrilled and excited to introduce my esteemed co-moderator, Justin Senior. Justin, can you give a little background on yourself? Thank you so much for moderating with me.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, just before I begin, I'd just like to start with or lead with a land acknowledgement. As we gather here today, I acknowledge that the land I'm speaking to you from here in Toronto has for many millennia been the traditional territory of Indigenous nations, including the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. We acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. But yes, Amanda, thank you so much for having me today. I know this conversation started many months ago. I think I was going through some books where Mo from your team had asked me to join, and I was had some specific requests from the team before we were able to get this going, and so happy that we were able to arrive at this day. So my name is Justin Senior. I am head of inclusive media at IPG Mediabrands in Kinesso, Canada. I am also a co-founder of POCAM, which stands for People of Color in Canadian Advertising and Marketing. We are a membership of 1,650 members. We started as 6, which were leaders from our respective spaces in this industry. And after coming together at the early days of 2020 and realizing that we needed to know more of each other, we decided to co-found POCAM together and bring more folks with similar experiences together and with the hopes of supporting each other. So yeah, it's been an amazing and complicated and very difficult journey to this date, but I'm happy to be here today and push this conversation forward.
Thank you. I'm truly excited to learn from you all. I know that it's a topic that I want to learn more about, and I'm excited to learn more about, and I couldn't be more happy to have these experts with us. So I'm going to throw to some of the panelists to introduce themselves. And David, perhaps we could start with you.
Hiya, my name is Dave. I'm the Chief Strategy and Data Officer for Publicis Media in Canada, and my pronouns are he or him. So I lead what we call the brand transformation practice with the Publicis Media. So there's a bunch of teams that fall underneath it. So anything from strategy to data science to research and insights, as well as ad ops. But one team in particular that would be really helpful today is our D&I team, or our inclusive marketing team. So we partner with our brands to help them navigate the journey that is D&I. It's a journey that is about inclusive marketing. The journey that could be so overwhelming, but a journey that is really important for brands.
I love this. I'm excited to hear your wisdom. Elizabeth, perhaps you could introduce yourself.
Hi, so yes, I'm Elizabeth Payton Jones, and I have 2 platforms. I'm CEO and founder of Models Trust and also Talent Trust. Both entities work with anyone who uses talent in their advertising campaigns, or if related to fashion, then in shoots and shows. We use a mechanism which helps talent have a voice and lets us capture issues which may occur on production. Our clients are brands, agencies, and production companies, and we help to improve communication and collect data, which we can build into a report, which can then inform decision-making down the line, especially to do with DEI. This data can capture operational issues on production, as well as pinch points, which could become reputational concerns or insurance and legal risks if not paid attention to. So it's a way of not being tokenism. It's allowing better training, so you're not just winging it. And yeah, it increases your brand's awareness of what's going on the production side, on your supply chain.
That's going to be a very interesting perspective, given we've got expert panelists from our advertising industry. And I love the creative side of things to ensure that we've got the foundation to ensure that we're executing
Thank you.
appropriately. So we'll talk about that more later. Sartaj, could you give us a little intro?
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me. My name is Sartaj Zakaria. I am the CEO of the Canadian Marketing Association. So I'm hoping many of you have worked with us. Our community does include creative, media, PR agencies, research firms, consulting, technology, the list is endless. And a lot of what CMA focuses on is related to thought leadership, professional development, consumer protection and commercial success. Within the DEI space, I also hold the title of Chief Diversity Officer. We've been really trying to make sure that we're taking an active and meaningful approach in how we provide resources and tools to the community to ensure that they're more inclusive than we already are, and that we are really truly representative of the Canadian landscape in our people that we have on our teams, and also in the marketing efforts that we're putting forward. So I'm excited to chat with all of you, and I'm going to consider this also a learning opportunity for myself to pick up some things that I might not know.
Thank you so much. Mary Lou, let's hear about you.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here. On the contrary to other panelists here today, I'm on the client side. So I'm the head of communication for Decathlon in Canada. We're a sports brand. I've been working at Decathlon for the past 2 years. My focus has been on increasing brand awareness for the brand and finding new ways to engage with Canadians across the country. And I'm here today because we've launched in the past year our ability signs, which we'll talk about later on during the conversation.
I am very excited to hear about this. Xavier, what's up in your world? Give us a little intro.
Nice to see everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. I'm Xavier Blais. I'm a partner and executive creative director at Rethink, Canada's agency of the year, 2 years running. We specialize in creative campaigns for global clients, amongst them IKEA, Molson Coors, Kraft Heinz. And I'm also here to talk with Marie-Lou about this initiative that we launched for Decathlon in the Canadian market, which is now a global initiative called Ability Science. Thanks for having me, and really happy to be hearing all these meaningful conversations.
Amazing. All right. So intros are done. Everybody's familiar with one another. Let's get into it. Let's get into the subject. So we're all familiar with the acronym DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, but I want to throw to Justin first as my co-moderator to give us a little bit of an understanding on what does this actually mean. Give us some fundamentals, Justin. You're on mute. I did that earlier. It's okay.
Never doing that again. I think when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, everyone is using it as, it's been used as a buzzword for sure. But I think in terms of being able to elevate the conversation in our own respective walls, it's an important acronym that stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, making sure that there's people that are in these rooms that don't look like us, that we're having conversations with different perspectives in that room. From an equity point of view, ensuring that those folks that aren't in that room have the tools and the access to education and different opportunities that can help them get to a space where they can succeed. And then inclusion, just ensuring that whatever we're doing out there, that everyone in Canada feels like they're part of that conversation, whether that's representation on a screen, representation in the boardroom, representation behind the notes that went into planning something important that will influence the world around us. I think diversity, equity, and inclusion is a massive conversation that can really be had and applied to any conversation. I think our goal is to really normalize it so that it's not necessarily a buzzword we need to use anymore. And we have a long way to go to get there. I feel like you see it being added to more and more action plans. And I think the action is the word that many communities are waiting on.
Thank you for that. I think that's a really great summary. And I know throughout your career and your history, you've experienced a lot of different roles, and we're so excited to have all of our panelists who have very specific actionable roles within the topic of DEI. So Elizabeth, perhaps we can start with you. What is happening in DEI advocacy within your role, your organization?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I mean I came across I came to this by accident, really. I mean, because what we were capturing was we were trying to find out on production with models mostly, and then talent, what was going on. And we found out that in fact there was, well, amongst sort of financial and, you know, other sort of humiliation and bullying and sexual harassment and stuff like that, which probably everybody knows about, there was also safety issues which were to do with harmful clothing and equipment. And when you actually dug into it, what was happening is that you would get black models, if you take black models specifically, on set, and what was happening is that they weren't, the people on set, the stylists, were not prepared to do their hair, for example, which has a totally different texture to a Western hair. So suddenly, you know, they were getting burnt scalps. And we were finding that, in fact, the black models had to go and have their hair done prior to coming on set. So they were already, you know, 200 to 800 pounds, which is probably around, you know, 1,000, you know, Canadian dollar mark, worse off before they're actually been on set. So they weren't in fact making money at all. They were already out of money by the time they'd you know, started the shoot. So it was about, okay, what do we do? It's to do with training. And then we found out, in fact, that was a difficult topic as well, training stylists. We found out that makeup artists didn't really have the right makeup equipment. Models were asked to bring their own makeup. So there was really a lack of knowledge on set. So despite the intention of everybody wanting to create a more diverse atmosphere and a more, you know, inclusive advertising campaign, what was happening is that the models and talent involved in that campaign were actually suffering and on set made to feel other, simply because there was not the equipment. Or, for example, a disabled model who arrives on set only to find that there's no lift and she's in a wheelchair and she has to climb 4 floors, you know. So it's like, you know, or a deaf model who goes on and in fact the director is talking to her all the time with his back to her. So it's great having this diversity, but you actually have to be incredibly aware of the diversity that you're bringing in, and then work out, you know, what you need to help them feel more at home. So that's how we got into it. Very long explanation, I'm afraid, but there we go.
It's almost like the infrastructure behind the scenes needs to exist before the application of inclusivity really can be effective.
Yes, and I mean, you know, it's very difficult for talent to speak up to a brand because the brand is paying them. They don't want to cause trouble and they know that this is their job. And so the way we capture it is through an anonymous survey. So we give talent a means or a mechanism to speak without them losing their jobs, because often they'll be told they're just being a problem and they already feel other. They don't want to also then be a problem and then not be hired again. So it's a way of allowing us to capture data for the brand, because the brand is doing this out of the good, you know, they want to do well. But if people aren't telling them actually what's happening on set, they can't do better or have the mechanisms in place that they need to do to make it much more holistic and really, you know, real. So, you know, we help them. That's the mechanism that we have. That's the that's what we do to capture this, not only DEI, but also, you know, dignity and safety and on set. Yeah.
Just a quick follow-up to that, Elizabeth, is that sort of an advent of the last, the need for safe spaces in the last few years, making it anonymous?
Well, it is. I mean, I think making it anonymous, because this is, as you know, DEI is a very hot topic and it's very emotive and people don't really know how to talk about it openly. And so this is a mechanism where people can say things they feel that they need to say without feeling there's going to be a cancel culture. But, you know, also it's a way of capturing, for example, we can pull out various groups from our data and find out if various groups are suffering more than other groups. So we can actually dig into the data and give you much more, a real view of what's going on. And this is moving into the film space as well, to uphold BAFTA. But it's interesting for the advertising industry, because obviously consensual spaces is what you're talking about. And a lot of advertising, actually, they have in fast-moving consumer goods, FMCG, you have a lot of intimacy products. You have Durex, you've got even ice cream, actually, Häagen-Dazs, if you look at their sort of very sexual adverts, there's two people being extremely intimate on set, but there's no intimacy coordinator there. They're kind of two people that have shoved together on the day and made to perform. And it's that kind of thing that we're helping brands deal with, and production deal with, and our talent deal with. We're very holistic the way we approach it.
Fascinating. We'll circle back to that a little bit later, I think. But
thanks.
For you, Mary Lou, how would you say your role sort of became more of a hot topic around DEI? I know in my experience, a lot of the corporations that we work with haven't always had these roles that are connected to DEI. So you're seeing all these new titles. Mine is a title that is, I think, a direct advent of the last 3 years. How would you say your role has become more connected to DEI?
When I joined Decathlon, there was a DEI committee that started. We're still very new in Canada as a brand. Decathlon is present in 60 countries already, so we're a new country in terms of the worldwide brand. And the way Decathlon kind of works is that we encouraged our teammates at work to go from one country to another, so that we can learn from other people's experience in their different markets. And so we have a lot of diversity in our teams. And it's very, very important for us that everybody feels welcome, but it's also good for us because we believe that Canada is a very diverse country in itself. So welcoming our teammates here as part of our team to help us grow and learn about the brand. They also represent the Canadian population, having them here. And so I would say that for me, it's not just like DEI and putting it as a hot topic. It's really part of the values of the brand. It's not something that I was close with in other more typical Canadian companies before, working in retail marketing and e-commerce. Yeah, as I was saying, for Decathlon, there's diversity by welcoming teammates, but we also have a lot of inclusivity when it comes to physical disability, hearing impaired teammates, and so on. We do have that a lot in our teams because we hire based on personality, and we don't put the barrier of the diploma or the certificate or the know-how first, but more of the personality and the values of the candidates.
I love that it was something that didn't come firsthand to you. This is something that you had to learn, you had to get there.
Absolutely.
So like today, do you consider yourself a DEI advocate and leader in this space? And what was that journey like in getting there?
Yeah, I feel like I still have to learn a lot. I have children now that are Black. And it's something that was also part of my personal journey of, I think, when you don't know the truth of the feelings and the reality from very close, so for someone not coming from the Bypoc community, I think living it myself on the personal side helped me grow in that sphere. And being in a company that really values that and it came with a bit of a more openness than where I was before. But I do believe I still have so much to learn about it.
Terrific, thank you.
I love that. That's amazing. And it's very encouraging as well, because it's a scary topic, especially for those of us who don't come from the BIPOC community. We want to learn and we want to engage and make sure that we're being as sensitive as possible. And having that personal connection, Marie-Lou, is incredible in the journey that you've gone through. I want to throw to Taj right now. So what can you tell me what the CMA is working on in the sense of your DEI strategies? And how are you benchmarking for success? You know, what is an attainable KPI for DEI success, and how do we even begin to understand what those KPIs look like? So if you want to give us a little insights on what the CMA are doing, that would be really great.
Definitely. I think if we start with the benchmarking side of things, I'm going to probably give an answer that might not be the most popular, but I don't think there's a one size fits all. I don't think there's one KPI that every organization can be working towards and achieving. I think is due to a number of factors. It's budget, human resources, who your clients are, what your services are. So to really say, okay, this is going to be a KPI, I would want to dig around in your business to understand what you're doing before I say this is a thing you should be striving for. With that said, the flip side of it is I think that the benchmark that every organization and every leader in every organization should have is to really take a deep look at what you're doing and where those gaps are. And so you're going to find those gaps from the senior team. You should have a good idea of what they are and where maybe you're not meeting the bar that you should be. The other thing that we at CMA do a lot of, and we're a small organization, a small association, but we deal with over 600 volunteers that help us. So that's our committees and our councils, our board. And we do outreach to them, and we provide surveys to them to say, you're involved with us on a day-to-day basis, and some of you are very heavily supportive of CMA. Where are you seeing that we're not meeting that bar? Where are you seeing the things that we need to be doing? And I think with every DEI work that anybody does, it is really about, and I know this is like a term that everyone says, but it's like that uncomfortable conversation. Like, just take it in, no one's attacking anybody, and create that safe space to have those conversations. In terms of CMA, we have done a few things, and we're working on a few more. I was in the prep meeting for this, I did share that I was really hesitant to start a committee. Everyone seemingly has a DEI committee, and everyone's like, you should start one. And I was like, I just want to make sure that what we're doing is differentiated from what everyone else is doing. And I want to make sure what we're doing is meaningful. I don't want to just check a box and move on and say, oh, we got a committee and here we go. So our committee's been hard at work. We're going to be launching some materials. They're going to be coming out soon with some resources. We've created 3 subgroups from that committee, one on resources, one on standards, and then one on storytelling. And the storytelling one is, I find it really interesting, because I think a lot of DEI work, well, I should say all DEI work is never ending. So it is that notion of people want to celebrate the wins, which are great. People don't really want to talk about the things that didn't quite land, but that's where the learning is the best. So within our committee, we have created this safe space that people can come and say, we tried this and it didn't work. Like, what did we miss? How did we not get it? What blind spots are we still facing? And also sharing the wins, obviously, because for a lot of organizations, and this goes back to that benchmarking thing, is if you're not a large organization or you have limitations, everyone does, you need to have those safe conversations to be able to lean in and learn from them. So that's kind of the work we're doing. The other thing that we've started, and I'm really proud of, is we did create a Bypoc mentorship program. And so our main goal there was to match a Bypoc mentee, hopefully with a Bypoc mentor. We know that in the industry, there's not as many Bypoc mentors. So we really sought out people who are allies. And that's just to help people who might have not had all the accessibility to everything, to understand what their career journey is going to look like. Because as a BIPOC person, your career path is going to look very different than someone who might not be BIPOC. And so how do you navigate those? And that includes having conversations where you might have felt uncomfortable. The last thing I'll say, and Justin, maybe you probably know, because we worked with POCAM on this, that CMA did do our 2nd annual DEI research. We're gearing up for our 3rd, launching in 2023, and there's some really great stats out of that, and we can share that with all the participants here, but I'll pause there.
I love that.
Yeah,
Jeff?
I actually would love to just quickly follow up on something you mentioned there in terms of hesitancy to launch a DEI committee and sort of the apprehension that may have led in prior to doing so. I know many organizations have reached out to me to be on their DEI committees and just exploring these conversations. I know at times at first it's like an honor to be asked, but then it's also a bandwidth thing to be asked. And then it's also what tone was that question, did it come in, and what have you done prior to creating that sort of DEI committee? So I just wanted to, you know, throw back to you and ask you, what are some of the things that the values that you put into creating a DEI committee? How did you choose who you wanted to select to be on there? And, you know, what suggestions would you provide to other associations that are considering doing the same?
Yeah, I think it was a very long journey, so I'll try to summarize as best as I can, but I did take a lot of time to reach into leaders in different communities. So I talked to leaders from the South Asian community, from the Indigenous community, from basically anyone who would talk to me. I talked to them to understand what their challenges were. And some of the challenges I to be honest, those are above and beyond what I can do. And for example, I talked to Indigenous communities, and one of the elders from the community said, you know, we're just trying to get clean water. I was like, I understand that I am not in a position to necessarily help you through my Canadian marketing work, but I can do something on the side maybe, or they're trying to get post offices, things like that. So I tried to like have those conversations and pick through where CMA as a marketing association can really lean in and help, and to also understand where there's a bit of hesitancy with marketing as a career. So I'm going off the rails a little bit here, but I will say as a first generation Canadian, my parents came from India, and they were like, you can be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. And I said, I don't want to be any of those things, but okay, I'll go to law school. So I went that route. But when I landed at the Marketing Association, they still were like, what the heck are you doing? But it's no fault of their own. For them, it was how do we, like for people similar to my parents who come here for all kinds of opportunities, there still is a need to help them learn about what those opportunities are. So the culture and society in Canada is very different than where some of us come from. And so how do we provide those resources? So as I was having those conversations, I was kind of in the back of my head, how do we provide opportunities and awareness and learnings for everybody? And so from that, we reached into our membership group. Honestly, we have a great group of members, and we were able to reach into them and say, how can you help? Do you guys have DEI committees? What are you guys doing? And through all those conversations, I saw there's a few gaps here and there, and how can CMA fill those gaps? So that's kind of the route that I took. And our committee is small, I will say. We're maybe 12 members. Like, we're not a huge committee. We have, I think, close to 400 members, but we took 10 people from those 400 and said, we want to work with you on this. And then we want to put it out to the broader community and see and reassess again, where are the gaps? What did we miss this time around? And hopefully keep evolving as we go.
That's fantastic. David, I know you at Publicis have put together some very comprehensive materials and guidelines. So can you share a little bit about that? I know I was privy to it because there was some mention to out-of-home specifically, and Alistair had given me the honor to preview it before it was released, but recently released. So I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, for sure. We launched our inclusive media planning playbook, and you know, because we really got some big issues that we have to fix as an advertising industry. You know, I'll give you some examples. So 75% of LGBTQ2S content in digital is not monetized, and that is really due to a brand block list. And when the content is not monetized, then they're not making any money. So that's one example. Another big problem that we found was that a typical Toronto out-of-home buy typically is missing about 60% of its Chinese community or Asian residents. That's a big problem, especially knowing the composition of the Toronto residents. So these are like big meaty problems that exist not just in digital, not just in out-of-home, but exist across all of the channels. Fortunately, there are very simple solutions that we think brands and agencies can actually take as a starting point. So this playbook really just evaluates or really presents what are the simple solutions. the example that I gave you about the brand, about blocking content when it comes to LGBTQ content, the solution could be take a look at your brand block list. You'll be really, really surprised on what you found there. When we were doing this exercise, I grabbed 5 just random brand block lists. Some of the stuff that appears there, like hip hop, gay, lesbian news, you'll be very surprised. And those brand block lists, were designed to really protect the brand safety, but in turn actually hurt the communities that we're trying to protect. When it comes to out of home, it is just it's just be about not just looking at the density of a neighborhood, but looking at the composition of the neighborhood. It's just one simple step that our planners and our buyers can do to make sure that our plans are as inclusive as that. The other thing that we've also been doing with our clients is hosting what we call our care workshop. So basically, when we get a brief that already is problematic, that's already pretty biased, usually as you work through the brief as strategists, and then as you build out a comm strategy or a creative strategy or a media strategy, and then you activate it, it just becomes a lot more problematic by the end of it. And you run out of time, you run out of money, and you can't fix the problem from the get-go. So what we started doing is actually when we get a brief from before our clients deliver their briefs, we actually create this care workshop where we look at the entire proposition and the entire spectrum of the marketing lever and ask ourselves where cultures, attributes of identity, race, ethnicities actually play into the whole product propositions or the whole brand campaign. Are we centering the right target audience that should be centered? Are we minimizing them instead of celebrating them? For example, one of the big things that we see brands do is that they would only celebrate certain communities during certain times. Like they would only celebrate, the South Asians during Diwali, the Chinese during the Lunar New Year's. That could actually end up hurting the very communities that we're doing. So that playbook really talked about the simple solutions that we could do to help make our plans more inclusive than they were before.
I know I personally, when I previewed it, found it very helpful, and I distributed it to the entire COMMB staff. I didn't distribute it publicly because I knew I had the preview access, but I sent it to the entire COMMB staff and I said, you must read this. Let's get familiar.
Justin, make it public.
Right?
We made it public.
I know you've made it public
all of
now.
our agencies. Yeah, thank you. That's very kind of you.
Before it was public.
We actually had a question come in from the audience from Kendra Lucky. This one is for Xavier and Mary Lou. What recommendations do you have for advertisers who are working with clients with limited budgets? Some projects require use of stock photography or don't have enough time to incorporate stakeholder consultation. How do you strike the right balance between authentically incorporating DEI and being superficial or performative?
That's a good question. There's not a lot of there's not a ton of ways to do it. Like internally, I'll talk about what we do at Rethink when we're like on a budget or we have to take decisions on a whim. There's been a diversity and inclusion committee that's been established, and what we do to ensure that the scripts represent Canada and the make of Canada and the social fabric of Canada accurately is that we run scripts and we run ideas through that committee through like something as simple as a Slack channel. So like it doesn't have and like imagery goes through that filter and scripts go through that filter and they're very like they're very on the ball and very like specific about the recommendation. So if you have a simple thing that's very like actionable from right after we leave this call is like establish, you probably have a committee going, you probably have some people that are responsible for your D.E.I initiatives, get them into like the same Slack channel or the same email chain and share the imagery you're looking for. If we're talking about stock photography, some sites have like since the push for diversity has been happening, some sites have been doing a great job at representing people of color and Indigenous people very accurately. So like, if you're not sure of what you're doing, go through peer review internally, and peer review even like on the brand side. So that's a quick one and a quick way to do it, and a very like I'd say I don't know, procedural way of doing it. Mary-Lou, do you have any other insight at what you do at Decathlon?
Well, yes, if I can just add quickly that at Decathlon, a lot of what we're doing in content creation when it comes to pictures is that we use our collaborators as the people on the images, because we want to be, our motto is sports for all for sports, and we really want to have sports very accessible for people like you and I, and not like athletes. And so we use a lot of our collaborators. So having a team that's diverse and representative of the country you live in this instance, Canada, I think helps a lot in terms of being authentic and being able to create content quite quickly.
I just kind of want to piggyback on that, because at the beginning when we were chatting, I think it was in your intro, or maybe it was our pre-game, if you will, before this, you were discussing a campaign, Marie-Lou and Xavier, that you had recently executed. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Do you have something to share with us that we could talk about it a bit more?
Yeah, I could just brush off the details first, and then get into the audio visual fireworks part. So looking for ways to Decathlon to like separate themselves, or differentiate themselves in a crowded market. What we like to do at Rethink is what we call ANAs, acts not ads. So instead of just saying what your brand believes, you're doing something to prove or to show what your brand believes. So in that instance, to have that positioning of le sport pour tous, tout pour le sport, sports for all for sport, live and breathe through, because it's really a thing at Decathlon. So like to just show the commitment. Instead of just showing it, we did something. So what we wanted to do is, we call it ability signs, and it aims to change the international symbol of access forever. We designed icons, and they've appeared. They first were destined for Decathlon's parking lots, and then they're in the store, and then they're everywhere. So I'll just show the video, the case study that we made for that initiative, and please tell me if you. I'll also drop the link. Because we've experienced some dropped frames in the past, so I'll paste the link, but I'll also share my screen and then start the audiovisual part. The link is there. I'm praying that it works right now. I'm a bit stressed. So I don't see your faces, and I like to have positive retroaction, so I'll just close my eyes and wait for 2 minutes. And see, and then we could chat afterwards.
I don't think that started at the beginning, Xavier. I don't think that's the beginning.
For decades, we've been representing people with disabilities with a single icon, but they are capable of so much more. So Decathlon, the worldwide retailer democratizing sports for the many, sought to turn disabilities into abilities. By incorporating sports into the international symbol of access, we told a completely different story. Using Decathlon's existing retail signage system, we designed 25 custom symbols and made them available to the world for free, along with digital stickers and out of home. The initiative started in Canada. Then things took off.
Decathlon va modifier ses logos pour mieux refléter la réalité des gens qui ont un handicap. Je trouve qu'il y a un message vraiment positif et d'inclusion dans tout ça. Donc, chapeau Decathlon.
Professional sports teams joined in. Then rec centers gyms, even competitor brands. Even the city of Paris used ability signs to create 16 new accessible parking spaces. Amazingly, the Paris 2024 Paralympic Games confirmed that ability signs will be installed at Olympic facilities during the Games. Sports brings out the best in all of us. Now it helps us see what everyone can do.
That's incredible. What an amazing
Fantastic.
campaign.
Really is.
Yes. It's so creative and,
Yeah,
and unique.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Powerful, very powerful.
Very
Thanks.
powerful.
So it was, yeah. So it was a way to have Decathlon's positioning actually live in the world and do something in the world. And we love that the brand team got on board so quickly, because for us, the part where the icons were designed for the world to use was an essential part of that idea. Because, like, of course, we talk about accessibility, but it also goes to, you know, not keeping it to ourselves and you know, allowing people to use it. It just so happens that the icon, the international symbol of access, also bears the Decathlon colors. That's just a coincidence. Mary Lou, you want to talk about like how it got implemented and how, like, because it was designed to be a small thing at first and a Canadian thing at first, and then like as soon as you got attention from people in France, where the headquarters are, I think it you know, it moved things around, didn't it?
Yes, totally. And it goes to show that Decathlon is really like a community around the world. We're very close between countries, but yes, the sign is now in our parking lot at the corporate head office of Decathlon in France. And we are constantly in talks with other Decathlon countries to help them implement it in their country as well. But I think the best part is that it's free of use. So we want it to be more than just about our brand, but for everybody, every brand, organization, or anything, try to have them and use them for inclusivity purposes.
I absolutely love that.
And just, I guess, just on that, it's amazing what the power of a great idea can do and how fast it can spread across an organization and have people join on. What happens if that idea is like 90% of the way there and there's a bit of uncertainty and you might roll out and maybe you make a mistake? You know, what level of certainty are you willing to go out there with, and is there always risk?
I'll speak for myself first. We're always willing to put pedal to the metal, and luckily we have brands and clients that believe in the ideas, which is always good. We have a thing, you know, it's a saying we keep repeating, which is called "Go then grow." So the initial, like, it's some of the language that some startups use, which is called the MVP. What's the minimum viable product of that idea, and how can you put in the world for as less as possible? Ideally, when you do that sort of initiative, they usually go out of the usual buys or the usual like briefs or the budgets. It's always like things that go a bit off brief, and that you know, when you have, they're always a bit off. So how can we put it in the world in the simplest and most interesting way? And then how can we build from that? So like, I'd much rather go out with an idea that's 90% there and make mistakes along the way and then fix them. Because we need more of these initiatives in the world. Like, it's like we've been making steady strides towards inclusivity, and it's awesome. But it's good that people are actually doing stuff. It's great to talk about it in committees, but I'd much rather go and get it wrong a bit, at 10% wrong, and make amends than not going at all. But I think there's always a risk, for sure.
I want to piggyback on that, Xavier. So I'm being cognizant of time as well. We have 10 minutes left of the of this panel, and it's been incredible. I want to jump to a question for everyone, and I'll kind of throw to each of you individually, and then we can kind of move into the summary, sort of wrap up. On the topic of doing and action, we've spoken about it a lot. That's why you as expert panelists are here, because you're doing such a great job doing and taking action within this topic in this space. What is one actionable item in your perspective, in your expert opinions, that companies or you would recommend for companies and organizations to take to help the adoption of DEI from an actionable perspective versus just from a conversational perspective? And so I'm going to start with Sartaj.
Great. I think that the whole campaign there just was amazing. So really good job to you guys. I think the one actionable item, and I'll touch a bit on personal experience, but it is just to lean into the communities that you're trying to work with or trying to be more inclusive of. And I grew up with, my dad wears a turban, and I remember we saw some sort of campaign for like tourism New York or something, and my dad saw another turban guy and he was like, oh my God, like I can go to New York now. And I said, you know, it's not really that big of a deal, like let's just calm down. And then I saw the work at a Loblaws around Diwali, and I was like, that's amazing. Like I wish when I was growing up I had this type of inclusive marketing towards what we were doing. But now I'm finding my cousins or my nieces and nephews are like, well, that's not how we celebrate it. Like the thing of inclusive marketing is never ending. It's always evolving. So I think it's just leaning into those conversations and taking that bit of risk. I know it's just what we're talking about, but you're gonna make more of a difference by trying than you are just by talking and sitting back.
I love that. David, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the first thing that an organization or brand should do is to actually look inward first. And that's probably a hard thing to do. You know, look at ourselves in the mirror and be really honest. What parts of ourselves do we like and what parts of ourselves we don't like, and fix it. You know, oftentimes marketing is the last thing that you have to worry about. Worry about whether we have an inclusive hiring practice, because some of the ways that we source our talents could also have systemic racism in it. Or the way that we treat newcomers to Canada by not recognizing their education. I think there's a lot of work that could be done there. There's a lot of work that could be done within products. That could be a lot of, and that way, when we're doing this looking inward, then we start forming a very clear lighthouse of who we are and who a brand is and what we stand for. Then when that's figured out, that's when we start talking about the other stuff. The worst thing is not to do the inward looking, advertise, put money behind it, and then people start coming up with the receipt. We do not want that to happen.
I think that's actually a good segue into Elizabeth, your perspective on the creative and the production side of things, because you know on the planning and strategy and the agency side, they're putting money behind this, but your perspective comes from the production side. So what is one of your actionable items?
Well, I'm going to say take a survey. You know, just get feedback. I mean, you know, but I mean, I have to agree with David in the way that it's very difficult to take bias out of yourself. I mean, because you don't realize that you're doing it, even if you're coming from a really good place. And so sometimes to be that sort of, to be empty, you know, of bias, that clean slate, as it were, and try and really see what is happening, because you can have, as you know, David was alluding to, a really perfectly diverse campaign, but then an all-white male, if you want, or whatever it is, you know, crew. So, or you're trying to be, you know, female, more orientated, but then it's again just, you know, you've got to have a sort of like a look at, you know, where your bias really is, and not just trying to present it outward, but really look inward. I think it's looking in that is the hardest part. But as I say, you know, survey is a good tool.
Mary Lou or Xavier, do you have comments you want to add?
Just a note about the creative process. You know, being a creative director, I think, bring diverse perspectives in. Like, great creative ideas come from a place that fosters diverse point of views. And if your idea is not strong enough to withstand the pressures of the D&I committee, for example, one being like, there's different point of views and there's different like ways to attack an idea. So if it's not strong enough, it won't survive. But if it comes from a place where and creatives and a team that's diverse, it'll win for sure. So bringing diverse perspectives and help ideas.
Yes, and if I can add, I loved all the point of view, and I really agree. I think also, instead of expecting the talk to create those comedy, which is super important, but also to listen to the people within the company. I think at Decathlon, we've grown from listening to our teammates, really empower them to be able to have those conversations and give those ideas of what we can do to improve and what we can do differently, coming from a brand that's an entity from a global brand. There's so many things that we can't change, but so many that we can by just thinking outside the box and listening to the people within our teams.
Incredible. Justin, was there a question that came through, I believe?
Before I get to the question, I'm going to answer your question.
Okay.
And I think you set that up perfectly for me, because I have only 4 words. Sign the call for equity. Sign the call for equity. Don't wander around in the dark wondering what you should be doing next. We've listened to our community, and we've thought about the things that matter for people in this industry, for the issues facing us in this industry. The call for equity is 15 actionable items for clients and 12 actionable items for agencies that you can take. There's steps that you can take to make sure that we are operating in a very functional, non-racist industry. Something that makes sure that everyone within this industry can succeed within the walls around them. Those 15 steps, those 15 and 12 steps matter so much to the individuals of color within this industry. All you need to do is click on this button, complete this form, and you'll have clarity to share with your teams on what people are asking for, what people are demanding, to ensure that we're on pace and moving the needle forward together. Now, COMMB, I had one request of you to ensure that this conversation happened today, and you were able to commit to the call. So now I put it to your audience.
We recently committed to it, so I'm very proud of that.
I put that out to your members and to your clients. Publicis, I know you're on there, and I know more agencies listening on the call are here. Let's see you. Let's see the accountability, because transparency is key. It's very key to having this conversation and ensuring that there's accountability for all. We have a last quick thing. There is a progress tracker that you can upload what you have done as an agency or as an individual client, and that way, you can see and learn from your peers. So you're not alone in this conversation. That's all I got.
And I would like to say that it's a big conversation, and myself included, I'm excited to learn. When we learned about the pledge, it was something that it took us some time to understand and really take in exactly what the accountability was, to make sure that we could hold ourselves accountable. And I know that our marketing team and our teams in general took this very seriously. So I appreciate, Justin, you making us aware of this. And we have 1 minute left, so perhaps we can throw this anonymous question out, and those of you who wish to stay on for maybe a couple minutes afterwards, you can hear the answers to the question.
So the last question that did come in was, what are the perception and implications of qualifying hires if a BIPOC candidate doesn't fit the qualifications? How do you recommend dealing with this situation within DEI plans? So that was an anonymous question put to us.
Maybe I can throw to David because I feel like you might have some good expertise on this.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely a delicate balance that we have to do, but I do, at Publicis, we definitely believe that the best candidate should get the role. We are hiring for skills first and foremost, but while I say that, very much understanding that there might be other factors that are in play while we may not be seeing diversity. For example, in certain roles, for example, brand strategists or communication strategists, and have a plan in place that could actually serve that in the long term. So, for example, working with high schools, working with colleges to make sure that there is the diverse communities know that there is a role within advertising, that there is a role within brand strategy, there is a role within comm strategy. So in the long run, there is definitely more diversity in that. The other thing that we always make sure that we do is that when our hiring managers put forward a list of candidates, we always make sure that there are BIPOC candidates within that.
That's very good advice. Does anyone else want to comment before we conclude?
I can just add on to that. The one thing that we've noted within the community is that sometimes resumes look different. So I think just when you are hiring and reviewing those resumes, you might be looking for keywords or key terms, but make sure that you're looking at them individually and really reading through them, because I think some people might not have access to the same experiences, but that doesn't mean that they don't have the same skills or tools within themselves to do the job just as well as somebody else. So it's a hard thing to do because it is human labor and painstaking to go through each resume, but it's just making sure that you're having a keen eye to reading kind of between the lines when things look like they're kind of on the right track, but maybe quite not lining up. So just take an extra long look there.
I love this advice. We're 2 minutes over time. I just want to thank the audience that did stay on during a couple of minutes over. I know everyone is very busy. So thank you for spending your afternoon with us. Thank you so much to all of these incredibly wise panelists. Thank you, Justin. You're brilliant at what you do. You're all brilliant at what you do. And I'm grateful. I've learned a lot from this session. And I know I've got a lot more to learn. And just very honored to have you here. And again, thank you to the audience so much. There's some comments coming in saying thank you to the panelists and great session. Hearts. Thank you. So truly appreciative for everyone's time today. And I hope you have an amazing Wednesday afternoon.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was great.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.